The pharynx has three sphincters to move food from the mouth to the esophagus. The first sphincter of the esophagus is the upper esophageal sphincter or pharyngeal esophageal sphincter, and then at the bottom by the stomach is the lower esophageal sphincter or gastroesophageal sphincter. There is a hole in the diaphragm to allow the esophagus through to the stomach below called the esophageal hiatus. A hiatal hernia is when pressure causes the stomach to rise up and try to come through that hole. This can be one cause of gastroesophageal reflux issues. The process of swallowing has a voluntary stage where we are in control of what we put in the mouth and chewing. Once the formed bolus enters the oropharynx, the involuntary portion starts and the food moves right along like an escalator. Upon swallowing, the larynx rises and moves out of the way, making a larger space for food. This is also to help the epiglottis to tightly cover the larynx, preventing food from entering the airway. Then sequential peristaltic contractions begin that move food down to the stomach. The peristaltic contractions are what the muscles of the muscularis externa do, so this process will be the main mechanism to move food all along the digestive tract. These are some images of the lower esophageal or gastroesophageal sphincter. See how the sphincter, which is an extra band of muscle around the tube, gathers the inner lining together? Also notice the mucosal change as we transition from the esophagus to the stomach. See the color differences from the esophagus of stratified squamous epithelial tissue to the area of the sphincter? This is a dysfunctional or incompetent lower esophageal sphincter. You can see the worm-like formations of the rugae within the stomach and an inflamed esophageal lining. This person has some terrible heartburn. The role of the stomach is to continue the mechanical digestion that the chewing started. The stomach uses its muscles to churn the food. It contains mucosal cells to begin the chemical digestion of proteins. It also produces intrinsic factor, which is essential for the absorption of vitamin B12, which occurs later in the last part of the small intestine. Once the food has been processed in the stomach, it is called chyme. The stomach has a number of regions and features. The fundus is a main region that is above the opening to the esophagus. The body is the main portion, and the stomach tapers to a narrow region called the pylorus and pyloric antrum. The shape of the stomach gives two curvatures. The lesser curvature is along the superior border, and the greater curvature is along the inferior border. Two sphincters control the entrance and exit of food to and from the stomach. The gastroesophageal sphincter, also known as the lower sphincter, opens to allow food to enter. The pyloric sphincter is between the stomach and the first part of the small intestine called the duodenum. The inside of the stomach has many distinctive folds called rugae. This increases the surface area of the stomach and allows for expansion. A fully distended stomach would have all the rugae stretched out and appear smooth. This is a beautiful image of an open esophagus and stomach. The esophagus is seen as white and the rugae as brown folds. This can be found on a wonderful website called WebPath. It's provided by the Department of Medicine from the University of Utah. Here is an image of rugae with a penny for size reference. This is the duodenum side of the pyloric sphincter. When food comes out, it is called chyme and it is very acidic. The mucosal layer in the stomach is dotted with holes called gastric pits. On a histology slide, we see a side view of the mucosa and the underlying submucosa. The muscularis externa with the 3 layers of muscle. The cells that line the deep pits in the mucosa secrete a variety of substances, each with a specific function. Goblet cells are at the top of the pits and they secrete mucus. Parietal cells are found mainly in the middle region, but some are also found deeper in the pits. Parietal cells secrete hydrochloric acid used to activate a protein digesting enzyme and intrinsic factor needed to absorb vitamin B12 in the small intestine. Chief cells are mostly found deep in the gastric pits. Chief cells secrete pepsinogen, which is a protein digesting enzyme precursor. Chief cells also secrete a fat digesting enzyme called gastric lipase. Finally, in the pyloric antrum of the stomach, endocrine cells called G cells secrete gastrin, which increase parietal cell production of hydrochloric acid when there is a lot of food in the stomach to maintain the digestion process. Other endocrine cells can be found in the stomach as well. To digest protein-based food that have been chewed and swallowed, both parietal cells and chief cells must secrete their chemicals. When a protein-based food enters the stomach, it must be digested or broken down into smaller protein segments. The small intestine will finalize protein digestion by breaking the protein the rest of the way down to single amino acid units. The process begins with chief cells secreting pepsinogen into the stomach cavity where the food is. Pepsinogen has no effect on protein digestion. It must be activated. Parietal cells secrete hydrochloric acid, which is also released into the stomach cavity where food is. Pepsinogen and hydrochloric acid combine to form pepsin. Pepsin is the protein digesting enzyme, but is not yet fully activated. Like a chainsaw, this is the tool used to cut wood. It won't cut unless it's activated or turned on when the throttle is pulled. Parietal cells secrete even more hydrochloric acid, which will lower the pH in the stomach, making the area around the pepsin and the proteins very acidic. This activates the pepsin to chop up all the proteins that it comes across. Finally, the goblet cells secrete a lot of mucus to seal the gastric pits, to cover the mucosa. This prevents the activated pepsin from breaking down the mucosal cells. If there is not enough mucus produced, the pepsin that is intended to break down protein in food instead breaks down the stomach wall. This is the cause of an ulcer.